For every adventure, the podcast that dives deep into everything outdoor.
This episode was cooking, Kyle.
I would describe it as a tasty episode. Huh? Listen,
It was a hot one. Put it that way.
Yes, there were margaritas in hailstorms, sonnets on mountains, great stories, great ideas for prepping your meals for your adventure, convenient products, not just the meals itself, but some of the gear we mentioned could really come in handy for you. So definitely stay tuned.
Yeah, so many tips and tricks, especially if you're looking for creative ways to zhuzh up your food on your next adventure.
For every adventure. An outdoor podcast experience brought to you by Outdoor Warehouse.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. I'm Kyle. There is Chanel. This is For Every Adventure. So, Chanel, I've learned a few things while hosting this podcast with you.
Quite a few,
and,
yeah.
Well, I've had a few opinions maybe change a bit because I was the guy who said, go out, go camp, get into the wild and let go of your comforts. You don't need to sleep well. You don't need to this and that. And it's sort of changed because I've learned that you need to take a few comforts with you. And that's the way you really enjoy the outdoors. You know, have a mattress there. Be comfortable when you sleep.
It's not just about survival.
Exactly. It can be if you would like to push
If that's
yourself
your
a bit.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But one of those things that I've learned is take good food with you. Make sure you eat well because that's also a comfort I think you need to properly enjoy your experience in nature. So let's chat about cooking today.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's such an important part of it. And I mean, I think I've mentioned before, I'm one of those that gets hangry quite quickly. So,
Oh, no.
you know, snacks and making sure there's always something that's very important on my list.
So how would you go about planning your meals for your adventure?
The planning thing, I'm still working on that. Okay. But I know that in this episode, we're going to get some fantastic tips and advice, and especially when it comes to food and great food while you're on your adventure.
Exactly. When I pose myself that question, the answer is, okay, so what am I braaiing when? But that's not always possible, I think.
Okay.
So I'm interested to learn cooking overall. But if we're talking about outdoor cooking, there are a few questions I think you need to ask yourself. You know, where is the adventure going to be? How many people are going? How far are you going? For how long are you going? So there are a few factors you need to think about when you prepare your meal plans.
I must say, thinking about how I approached this naturally, we were about 18 years old and it was one of those like, let's take a tent and go somewhere, see where we end up. And my mom said, what are you going to eat, my girl? I was like, yeah, ek weet nie. But at the end, she gave me this little gas stove. And I was the only one that actually was like a little bit prepared for this whole thing. So made like eggs in the morning.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think I realized then already how important this is.
Yes.
But when you're talking about a hike, I'm, very concerned about the snacks, but then concerned about what I need to carry because I'm not going to get very far if I have to, carry too much. So I think there's a lot of planning that goes into this. And if, both you and I, we're not the experts on this. So today is the day we're going to learn.
I'm so excited. I have a critical lack of planning. The last time I went camping, I was quite younger and for some reason in my early 20s, I don't know why, but the priorities weren't with the food.
No, it's not. Never is.
That being said, we were close to a shop. So that also makes a difference. And that's probably something you need to take into account as well. If you're going to be real remote, far deep into the wild with your adventure, you're probably going to have to really pack a lot of food, I guess, but we're going to find out. We have our expert in studio and can't wait to introduce her to you.
The seasons are turning, and here at Outdoor Warehouse, we are getting ready for the summer sun and outdoor cooking. Keep your food items cool and fresh with our amazing assortment of cooler boxes, fridges, freezers, and thermoelectric coolers. And keep the fire burning with our braai essentials like grids, bread pots, and gas lighters. Make summer cooking easy and affordable, no matter where the adventure takes you this summer. Outdoor Warehouse. For every adventure. For every adventure. the official Outdoor Warehouse podcast that brings you everything you need to know for your next adventure.
So today we're chatting to Catherine Cartwright, and she's an outdoor explorer extraordinaire. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you so much.
And also she's got this brand called Mama Alles, which is just everything. Like Mama Alles, it says it in the name. Catherine, tell us a little bit about your product. There's no one better to ask to introduce it than yourself.
Thank you. Yes. So Mama Alice is an outdoor adventure meal brand. So we make quick to cook, light convenience meals, and all you have to do is add water.
Wow. Kyle, this one's for you.
Definitely. I agree totally. What inspired you to start this brand?
I have always been an adventurer. I've grown up camping and going on safari trips with my parents.
Okay.
And my father had 3 daughters, so he was always keen to teach us how to build fires and set up tents. And
that's
so
cool.
we've really had an adventurous upbringing. And as I got out of high school, I started hiking and I became really interested in multi-day hiking. And I really wanted to get out there, but food for me has always been a barrier. I was a very fussy eater as a child. Then I became vegetarian and then vegan, and I became even more fussy. And so I asked some friends who were going to the Drakensberg, it's a trip they did every year, what they were eating on this trip. And they told me they had rations of Salticrax and Melrose cheese and canned tuna and baked beans. And I was immediately put off. I was like, if this is what I'm going to be eating for a week in the mountains, there's no ways that I'm going.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
And so I just did a 180. I was like, no, I'm not going to do multi-day hiking if this is what's on offer. And instead, I started doing overnight hikes. So, less weight restrictions.
Yes.
You can kind of carry fresh things. And so I would cook fresh food, sweet potatoes, take up a can of tomatoes. And it didn't really matter because it was just one night. And then I got an opportunity to do the Fish River. And a friend of mine who also eats a plant-based diet and also really cares about, homemade, good quality, healthy food, spent a week in front of her oven. She brought her computer home from work because when you're dehydrating in the oven, you have to watch that it doesn't burn.
Oh, okay.
And she dehydrated us the most extraordinary food, from Lebanese lentil stews to ramen. She made the noodles from scratch.
Wow.
And I just couldn't believe that you could eat like this on a trail or on a camping trip. We've always been led to believe, or there's this idea that, hiking and camping,
like
you
this
eat
baked beans thing,
Exactly,
yeah.
Baked beans, 2-minute noodles, bully beef in a can. And it's this weird thing of you going to these really beautiful places, but you're eating this like awful food that hurts your tummy and like doesn't give you the energy you need to continue the next day. And so this Fish River trip just completely blew me away. And since then I was like, well, this is my, gateway to the outdoors. I now have this know-how of how I can spend 5 days in the Drakensberg or wherever I am eating really good food. So that's what planted the seed for me.
Listen, I think we need to backtrack a bit because Chanel and I were sitting in the traffic on the way to the studio this morning, and you were overnighting on Table Mountain.
Yes. Last night after work, I packed my bag. I was very worried about the cold, so I added in a bag of kameeldoring firewood.
Oh, yes.
And hiked up onto the top of Table Mountain. I'm a member of the Mountain Club of South Africa, so I have access to a hut up there. Just me and one girlfriend. And we got up there. We just made it in time as it was getting dark, the last few hundred meters in the dark, and spent the night on the mountain, had made a quick meal. There's you just have to bring your gas stove, but all of the other things are up there. Spent the night in the hut, nice and warm by the fireplace, and then hiked down this morning, had an incredible sighting of 2 Varroa, commonly known as black eagles, watching them soar down Kasteelspoort this morning. And then I had a couple meetings and came here.
Isn't that amazing? And it just shows it can be done.
Absolutely.
Here's a midweek overnight trip. And I mean, it must feel like it was an entire holiday.
Yeah, no, you get up there, there's no cell phone reception, there's no connection to the outside world. You're really in the mountains. You can't hear the city or yeah, it's almost like you drove for 3 hours to go hiking in the Cederberg or in Robertson, but you're 10 minutes away from your place in town. It's, we're so blessed in South Africa, but especially in Cape Town with the proximity to nature. So it's, really conducive to an outdoor lifestyle.
That's incredible.
I was wondering why kameeldoring? Is there a specific reason or not really?
So I'm not, even though I've known how to make a fire since I was about 6 years old, I'm not an expert on wood. But my partner, if we go to a place and there's a fireplace inside to heat the donkey boiler, inside he'll have fires going everywhere. So he's really taught me about fires and firewood, and he specifically said I must buy kameeldoring because it's very dense wood, so it burns for longer. So they have those little like Argo fireplaces with a glass door. So you can just have one piece of wood burning and it'll burn for like 30 or 40 minutes. Then you add another piece. So considering I had to carry it up there in my backpack, limited space, limited weight. So I think I had about 8 or 10 pieces of wood and there was one left over this morning. So nice, slow burn, keep you warm for longer.
So how do you prioritize what you pack into the backpack? Weight is obviously a big consideration for you when going on a multi-day.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's like a weird calculation, which the less you weigh as a human being, the less you're allowed to carry. I think it's like 15 or 20% of your body weight.
Okay.
I'm usually at like 35% of my body weight. So if you're doing a multi-day or an overnight, you don't want a pack that's more than like 12 to 18 kilos. When my grandfather was hiking 40 years ago and he didn't have all of the luxuries and the lightweight and the titanium that we have now, his pack was like 30 kilos. But there's a part of personal preference, but there's also, you have to have a sleeping bag. If there's no hut, you have to have a tent. You need a gas stove. You have to have your cup and your plate and your clothes. So there's things that you have to take. And then, on food, you can take a can of beans or 2-minute noodles, big weight difference there. Yeah. Or you can choose if you want a bottle of wine or a book. There's all of these things that you can decide as an individual what your preferences are or what luxuries you're willing to bear the weight for.
It's interesting that you mention a bottle of wine or a book. Is that like items that you would pick if you had a choice of one thing? What would you go with?
It would be a book for me. I'm not a drinker, but often the people in my group, when I did the Amatola, a friend had a glass bottle of Old Brown Sherry and a glass bottle of whiskey and a 800-gram glass jar of peanut butter. And those were his things.
Peanut butter.
Yeah, most people would decant their glass bottle of Old Brown Sherry into a plastic bottle. But he wanted the weight, So everyone has their own thing, but I'm more of a book gal.
Kyle, and you? What would you take if there's one thing?
Well, maybe also a book. I also enjoy a good read. Definitely no cell phones or technology. That's the one thing. I don't want those comforts when I'm going out. But maybe a 6-pack of something as well with the book.
I don't know.
No, not for you.
It's a pillow for me. You've got to sleep well. Oh, and extra snacks. That's it.
Extra snacks.
Always snacks.
So I think a thing to take into consideration is also the group you're going with. I guess different groups have different ways they plan for a trip.
Yeah, totally. It's so varied. Last year I did a hike with 4 women. I was really excited to do like a women-only hike. We did the Otanikwa. But the Otanikwa has a lot of spots. So there was another group alongside of us. So we all cook together. Then I take a 5-liter pot and we share our meals together. But the group alongside of us, they were all university students. Actually, one of them was a very regular customer of Mama Alice. So it was nice to meet him and hike alongside of him. But they all cooked in pairs. So they had smaller pots. Everybody was eating a different thing at lunch and dinner. So completely different styles, all the way to, friends I know when they do the Fish River, they have those massive like 15-liter pots. And each day, if it's your group's chance to cook, you carry the pot and the big ladles on your pack. And then the next day it gets transferred over. So every group has different ways of cooking. It's all down to preference. And for me, it changes. I love on my Drakensberg hike in March this year. this group, they do like a kind of come dine with me style of cooking. So it's not just about whose turn it is to cook for the group, but you have to have entertainment and you have to have a cocktail and a dessert. So it's kind of like a 3-course meal, and even though there's only so much you can take on a hike, I'm always amazed at the level of effort, or I suppose the like luxury capacity, like presenting a plate of olives or like flatbread with like harissa, hummus and dukkha on it. And you're like, where did this come from?
It becomes a challenge then. The fun is in that. Okay.
No, they should rate each other after each night.
Yeah.
That's a good way to destroy a friendship.
So, Catherine, for yourself, when it comes to meals and meal planning, what's your favorite go-to?
So I suppose with everything, it all comes down to what hike it is, who's the group, etc. But there's kind of 2 ways that I look at it. The one is like always having a meal that's there for that convenience. And that's what's so great about the Mama Alice products. All you have to do is pour hot water directly into the bag, wait, and you've got your meal.
Yeah.
And then there's the kind of option if you want to elevate that. So if you want to add, whether it's like fresh herbs or spring onions or avocado, or if it's, Carl, if you're going to braai and you want that boerewors on the first night of the Otter Trail, there's a braai grid. You've got your side dish for that meal. So there's that kind of convenience element. But if you like to get more playful, playful but still kind of combined with convenience. So last night, it was just an overnight hike, and you can do this with dehydrated vegetables or with fresh vegetables. But we took up some coconut milk, a curry paste, fresh veg, and then rice noodles, which cook really quickly. So we had a Thai green curry veggie noodle broth. And that was so easy to just chuck in the pot, but you still have a bit of creative input into your meal. It's not just everything came out of one bag into your pot. So you could choose your vegetables. I actually fried some tofu at home before I left. You can also get dehydrated tofu if you go to Cyril Dean or Chinatown, depending on where you live. But finding that balance between having that like independence and choosing what you want to cook. And there's so many little hacks you can do, whether it's pesto, you get like sachet pestos from some supermarkets, adding that with pasta. And then maybe you fry up some meat or braai some meat and add that into it. It's finding that balance between convenience and then, what you feel like that night.
And when it's a multi-day hike, is there a lot of sort of energy planning that goes into that? Like at this stage, I'm going to need this amount of energy. Do you plan your meals to that extent, or is that taking it a bit far?
That's where the snacks come in.
Okay.
All about
all
the
of
snacks.
That on the second day.
Yes.
That's the problem.
So if you're eating your consistent meals, and I always have like some kind of rehydration electrolyte sachet that really helps me.
Okay.
I find as I'm getting older, like I can't get up a mountain without having some electrolyte drink before I start. But I usually have at least 4 salty snacks a day and 2 sweet snacks a day.
Oh, wow.
Because you're sweating so much, you're obviously losing a lot of salt throughout the day. And so you need to be replenishing that salt.
Okay.
So like salted roasted nuts or crisps or whatever your kind of choice of salty snack is. I used to take more sweet snacks because I love chocolate. But actually your body is going to be craving salty snacks. So I have lots of salty snacks throughout the day. And then a sweet snack usually after lunch or after dinner. But I find, at least in a lot of my peers and people I've spoken to, find that salty snacks is really what you're after on a hike. And that's what you use for your energy to get up that hill or for the last push or, wherever you're looking for that energy. It's
that's good
in
advice.
The snacks, which you have to keep accessible in the right pockets. Whether you're driving on a trip and it's in the cubby hole, the center console, or it's in they call them pincers, the straps that come around your hips.
All right.
If they've got a zip pocket, that's where you got to keep your snacks.
I have to tell this story because this is how important snacks are to me. So we went fishing, right? So it's a very long hike. And I took Oma rusks wrapped in a little plastic bag and like stuck it here in the like the bikini top, okay? Because I was having my Oma rusk at some point. So I understand this. And what makes it great is these days you get all these McGafters to like store things in, and it makes it so much easier. So I think it's wonderful that we have all these luxuries compared to those days, as you said.
No, completely. And also, I mean, something like specifically about our Mama Alice packaging is it's all resealable. So like your hummus, for example, and I'll save all my hummus bags and then I'll go buy like a bulk peanuts and raisins or salted nuts. And then I ration my snacks. So I pack in the little hummus packets, just reuse. It's like a Ziploc bag, but I didn't buy it. It was, reused. And then I ration all of my snacks. So I know I've got like 6 salted nuts and, whatever it might be. So it's all ready to go and fit into the pockets it can fit in.
Wow.
Rusks, though.
Yes.
What do you like? Suck on it while you...
It's my favorite thing.
Oh, okay.
I'll definitely... that's the other thing. So I've said pillow, and then it will be like a packet of rusks on the hike,
Pillow
okay?
and rusks.
There we
Okay,
go.
okay,
Well,
why not?
this morning in the hut on Table Mountain, there was a group of guys next door to us, and then I was there with my friend, and she had brought some Omar rusks, but the group next door to us this morning, very kindly, we both were up at the same time having coffee and tea, very kindly came into our room and offered us some of their rusks.
Okay.
So there were plenty of rusks going around, yeah.
So, Mama Alice, does it cater to different types of people? Because I guess, like Chanel said, you're going to have the bigger guys who are going to want the braaivleis. What would you tell them? How would you tell them, hey, but this is just as good?
Yeah, so, there's 2 elements to that. The one is, we have this huge obsession with protein, which is very valid. It's important for your brain development. It's important for building muscle. It's important to stay awake during the day. It's a big, important nutrient. But what a lot of people don't know is that protein is in everything. So all of our meals have, except for one meal, but all of our meals have a legume in them, which is very high in protein. So black beans are as high in protein as steak. You absorb a bit less of that protein. But so our meals are really good in terms of their nutrient content.
Okay.
But then portion-wise, so our 130 gram, which is our single serving, rehydrates to 400 grams. So that's nearly half a kilo of food. And I've never had anybody say that they were not full. I've only had people ask to make the meal smaller. But for me, you don't want to get to the top of a mountain or you all the way in the middle of nowhere in Namibia and you cook your food and you realize that it's not enough. Or the packaging said 1 to 2 people, but really only it's good enough for one person. So we've been, we've overcompensated. We've been more generous with our serving size. And one of my biggest clients, he's a hiking guide in the Drakensberg, recently took up some of the Springbok rugby team into the Drakensberg.
Okay.
And they were all satisfied. So,
That
if the
says
Bok are
everything.
satisfied, everybody else will be satisfied.
Definitely. I think we should stop there and go, well done, Bokke. Or, we were so close, guys.
No, don't even say that, Kyle.
Well, tell me about the inspiration for your recipes. Does it come from trips, something you've maybe experienced as a child? Or?
So all of the meals, apart from 1 or 2, are inspired by the African continent.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's a continent that I really love. I'm from here. It's so diverse. There's so many incredible cultures and different food. And, a lot of the other brands do quite globally recognized, things like a Thai curry or a chili con carne or, whatever, a shepherd's pie, these kind of lasagna, these kinds of meals that are universally recognized. And for me, I thought this was a great opportunity to celebrate meals from the African continent, to teach people about it. You might have never heard of an Ethiopian dal or a Central African peanut stew, but now, if you're walking around town, you're looking for a restaurant to go to, maybe you'll try an Ethiopian restaurant and start supporting African cuisine. So I thought it was a good opportunity to celebrate and share these dishes with people.
Kyle, so I tried the Central Africa peanut stew last night because I just, I had to. Okay. It's amazing. It's so good. And I can't even think what it must be like being in this remote location somewhere and having this extraordinary meal. So I must say, well done on that. And I think it's also especially because it's got this unique African flavor to it, which is your favorite and the feedback that you get. Which ones are the best?
Yeah, so it's funny you tasted the Central African peanut stew because when you kind of read the ingredients for that, it's a peanut and tomato-based sauce with sweet potato and spinach. It sounds a bit odd, but this is the dish that people come back for the most. It's the one that people really, really love because it takes them by surprise. It's kind of like wholesome and hearty, but also creamy and fresh. And so people really, really love this dish. So I'm glad that you've tried it.
And I must say, like, you look at the packaging and you go, this isn't going to be enough for me. Like, I like eating. And then when it's done, you like, there was a bit left. Like, I couldn't even finish all of it. So I think that you've got that part of it right as well, for it just being enough.
Yes. And even, sometimes really depending on your snacks, if you're doing like a 3-course, come dine with me, you have leftovers which you can have for lunch, or, it's better to have leftovers than it is to have too little. And then the other dish, which is the one that gets ordered the most is the Moroccan tagine. I think people are the most familiar with that concept. They love couscous, they love butternut. So that's the most ordered dish. But the new favorite is the jollof rice, which is a dish from Senegal and Nigeria. And it's almost like a red risotto. So it's rice with red peppers, thyme, very kind of rich and deep. And then you can serve it with chicken. We serve it with black beans. So that's your protein element. And people are really enjoying the jollof rice.
Okay. Now you know, if you can't cook that night, Kyle, because
Listen,
baby
I can't cook.
keeping you up.
But it seems like even I would be able to cook the Mama Alice meals. Yeah.
Can you boil a kettle?
Barely, but I can. Yeah, I make a mean coffee.
If you can boil a kettle and stir, you'll be able to make our meals.
And this is what makes it so cool, is that you can do it like inside the bag. I mean, there's no fuss at all.
No.
You just pour the boiling water into the bag. And I saw that, you can put it in a pot as well if you prefer that way.
Yes. But a lot of people hiking now, it's so interesting because you always kind of get stuck in your own world of what you do and what you eat and what gear you use. And the more you speak to people, you learn what they're doing. And so a lot of people like to just add hot water to the bag. And that's never really how I cooked our meals. I always did it in a pot because I kind of like the idea of making my own food. But then you also hear of students or people, hiking guides who just can't be bothered to wash the pot. They're busy dealing with all of their clients, or they're hanging out with their friends. They just want to, have their beer and watch the stars. So just pouring hot water directly in the bag, eating it out of the bag. You don't have to wash anything other than your spoon, which, maybe even just lick clean. So yeah, there's that convenience element of just pouring it straight into the bag.
So Mama Alice really has a wide variety of different meals. How do you plan your meals for different types of adventures?
Yeah, so every adventure is not equal. And I did a 3.5-week 4x4 trip around Namibia. And then, you have a lot more, equipment with you. You can have a 2-plate stove. You've got a bigger pot. You can, one of my favorite things that you can get at Outdoor Warehouse are those volcano pans, those really large one. And my partner, even if he's just frying an egg for one person, he's using that 50-centimeter pan, that luxury of just having a beautiful nonstick pan that you can just stick on the fire and have the space to really cook your egg, cook your rosti. In Namibia, you obviously can't get a lot of fresh produce, but you'll get your potatoes and your onions. So he, will make a fresh rosti for us for breakfast, and we'll put some leftover Ethiopian dal. That'll be, my version of an egg, and he'll have a fried egg. So you really have a lot more at your disposal. You've got, your fridge that's plugged into your car. So you can have, fresh bag of salad, or you've got a cucumber that you've maybe brought all the way from Cape Town with you. So there's that option of being able to create, a meal that you might eat more at home. I mean, there's almost nothing that you can't do on a 4x4 trip that you can do at home. You might not have your, your blender or, your coffee machine, but you can certainly really get creative in the kitchen. Braai your steak, braai your boerewors. There's beautiful meats in Namibia and across South Africa. And and then even our friends that we went with, her mother is Swedish, so she's always making these beautiful Swedish potato salads. She pulls out her drawer from her 4x4, and there's sesame oil and soy sauce and all of these different things that you can have. And so for those who love to cook, which are many South Africans, it's really exciting to go on a camping trip. You do have to plan your meals.
Yes.
You can't just pop into the shop in rural parts of South Africa, or if you're in the Kruger, you might get some tomato sauce and a Omar rusk in the local shop there, but you're not necessarily going to get the ingredients you want for your meal. So planning your meals is important. But really, there's no limits to cooking when you 4x4.
And I think that's a thing. Like, there's so many people that love cooking, that like real foodies that don't even think of going on trips like this because they think, yeah, now I have to leave all my food behind and eat terrible food. So you don't have to. And I think this is a big message for me as well, going, you can do it in such luxury. And then it makes it even better than being at home because you're in this amazing setting.
Yeah, completely. Again, at the beginning of our conversation, we were speaking about this association of eating canned beans and bully beef when you go camping. There's really no need to do that. When you're camping, it's not like you've got to go to work for the whole day and then you've got to come home and quickly prepare dinner for your family and you had a long day. You've woken up in this glorious place and like, what are you doing that day? I don't know, fishing, going for a walk. So really taking the time to like cook a beautiful meal with your family is part of the joy of being in the outdoors, of having that time.
And would you say this ties into your goal with Mama Alles?
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe that the more people who are spending time outdoors, the better for their mental health, the better for their relationships with their family and their friends. If you're breathing in that fresh air, you're going for walks, you're getting out of your day-to-day environment of being at home and just like taking the space to breathe, I think is important for everyone. And I really noticed there was a year where I hiked Lion's Head every single week. And I really noticed the change over the year, just in that year, of more and more people hiking. And post-COVID, I mean, if you're on Table Mountain on a weekend and the weather is good, there are so many people on the mountain. And because there were only a few weeks where all you could do was hike. You couldn't go to a mall. You couldn't go to your local sports club. Your children couldn't go to school. So what were you doing to socialize or to, for entertainment? You were walking on the mountain. And so there's been such a huge increase. And some people wish there were less people on the mountains. But for me personally, the more people who are outdoors, the better. The better to grow the industry, the better for our health, for our communities, for the safety on the mountains. The more people who are out there, the safer it becomes. So it's really exciting to be working, or it's really exciting to own a business where I'm helping people get outdoors, to break down those barriers, from food to like my blog post where I share, how to do everything with people. The amount of questions that I get, it just warms my heart from, like your kind of classic Kugel who wants to know, like, what are the toilets like on the Otter Trail? You can DM me on Instagram any question you have, to like, 60-year-old tunnies who want to know the weight of the packaging of my product. Because even though it's only 130 grams, how much does the packaging weigh? Well, it's between 6 and 11 grams. But for her, that's the world of difference when she's doing the oorlogskloof and she's a bit old, so her knees aren't as strong. So, having this information or having good food or knowing which backpack to buy or which shoes to wear or if the toilets are clean enough on the Otter Trail, all of this just means we can encourage more and more people to get outdoors. And yeah, that's the main reason that I do what I do.
And where can we find you, your blog? Or do we follow you on Instagram? What's best?
Yeah, you can follow on Instagram, mama_alles, ALLES, and just one M in the mama. And then our website is mamaales.com. And on there, I've got my blog. So that's from all of the trails that I've done, some other trails that people have done. There's some meal planning suggestions for multi-day hikes. Recipe suggestions that, don't include my products, but if you want to get more creative in the outdoor kitchen, to the gear that I use on my hikes. So all of the different information that you need there.
So when I'm at home, I'm not necessarily the biggest breakfast guy, but I can't picture anything better. And I mentioned it earlier than sitting by the campsite. You've got the river in the background doing its thing. It's quiet. It's sort of cold. You've got a fire going, and now you're going to make a nice breakfast. And we've spoken about snacks and lunch and dinner. Do you have nice breakfast options as well?
Yeah, so we have got 4 different oats flavors, all of which they're actually exclusively available at Outdoor Warehouse. So it's apple and cinnamon, pear and chocolate. This is the favorite it's my favorite as well. Especially if it's like healthy chocolate that you're eating for breakfast, it feels like such a win. Mango and turmeric and chia and nectarine oats. So just simple oats. You can dress them up however you like. If you want to add honey or coconut milk or dairy milk or yogurt, or just eat them plain if you're in a rush. It's a really filling breakfast. And again, this portion size, it's only 70 grams of oats, but most of the time I cannot finish the portions. It seems so small, but oats are incredibly filling and keep you going. It's low GI, so it really keeps you going for a long time.
Fantastic.
I am a bit worried about, teenage boys. My boys, they eat. Some days I think, how can you fit all of that into that body? So I suppose you can pre-plan this and add take extra for the meal and then use the mama alles as your sort of aside as well.
Exactly, yeah. So whether you're packing extra fruit or you want to add in a nut butter or something to just, give it... just add something to give it more oomph and a bit more, weight. You can add things to the oats, which is nice because it has its own flavor, totally good by itself. But I often find myself adding in a nut butter or chopping in some extra fruit or, depending on how I'm feeling or how many people I'm feeding.
So, listen, Mama Alles, I think the name is perfect because it sorts you out with alles when it comes to your adventure meals, eh? And all these products are available on your website and at Outdoor Warehouse.
Yes, so Outdoor Warehouse stocks almost our whole product range, and it's currently in 18 stores, soon to be in 21 of their stores.
Nice.
So, and it's available in the Outdoor Warehouse online store. So you can just pop into your local outlet and get some. And everything's also available on our online store.
So we like stories. We like especially those stories where something goes wrong. So we're going to put you on the spot. Do you have a specific adventure where you feel, wow, things just didn't go to plan? And how did you sort it out?
Yeah, so luckily, in hiking trips, things go wrong often because you're really hiking to more remote places and the weather changes and you might get lost. But most recently in the Drakensberg, and this was really a trip that I planned for mentally and physically for a long time. I was always quite scared of the Drakensberg, massive mountains, high elevations. A lot of people get lost there. The weather changes very, very rapidly. And so I really prepared myself. I did a huge hike in Italy in the Alps last year, getting to the right kind of altitudes.
Oh, wow.
I felt, I was like, okay, now I'm physically fit. And then it was the mental thing of being, in South Africa, a completely different environment, making sure I have everything that I need. I've done a wilderness first responder course, so I felt more confident from a first aid perspective. I was like, cool, I'm ready for the Drakensberg. And we had a guide. That was my one rule. I was like, there's too many things that can go wrong in the Drakensberg. We're going to have a guide. It also, with your group dynamic, you don't have to always be consulting a map and where you want to have lunch and where you're going to sleep. Someone just takes those decisions out of your hands so you can really just enjoy. So on our first day, we wake up. It's so beautiful. I also wanted to hike in March because I wanted to hike in a green Drakensberg, that kind of Lord of the Rings feel.
Yes.
If you hike in August, which is the best weather month, it's all brown. And I wanted the green lush. So we went in March. And we get up, so you hike up Sentinel and you get to Tugela Falls. And there's a lot of people there. Everybody comes to see the falls. You get the magnificent views of the Drakensberg. It's like one of the easiest ways up onto the escarpment. We're having lunch, and the group I'm with are very much a smell the roses kind of hiking group. They love to stop and look at the flowers, read a Shakespeare sonnet at lunch. They really want to soak up every moment. But, in March in the Drakensberg, thunderstorms roll in the afternoon. You really want to wake up early, hike, get to camp, set up camp, and then you can smell the roses.
Yeah.
So our guide at lunch was like, oh, they're really reading a Shakespeare sonnet now. We've got to go, guys. You can see the clouds coming. So eventually, after this very long lunch and a swim in the ice-cold pools, we start hiking. It starts to drizzle, and then the mist comes in, and you can barely see the person in front of you. So there's a whole energy shift. Now you're a bit nervous. You're hiking a bit faster. You're trying to keep up. And then the thunder starts. And then we're in an open field. It's, just the veldt, open grass. There's no trees. There's nothing above us. And the lightning starts. And it's cracking all around us. And we're now starting to flinch and get a bit nervous. And we, in my wilderness first responder, I learned that you want to be, 4 to 5 meters away from someone, because if they get struck by lightning, you don't want the ground current to come to you, because so we want to be together because we're nervous and scared, but we don't want to be together because we don't want to get the side splash from their lightning strike. And it gets, you can the energy shifts, you know. And so our guide says to us, guys, the safest thing to do is to stop, set up camp, and then we can decide whether we're going to hike further. I mean, we've hiked about 9-10 kilometers at this point. We were supposed to hike about 16, 17. So we set up in this flare and we just get into our tents, and it's just cracking everywhere. Now it's hailing. We're just like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. And you can't hear the tents. You can't hear your friends. You know, that we were 3 pairs and then the guide. So you just wait for the storm to be finished. And then we come out and we kind of relieved, and we look out. The ground is covered in white, tiny little bits of hail. There's a herd of wild horses drinking from a river. The sun's come out. We can see over the escarpment. It's really beautiful. And our friends who were doing dinner that night, come dine with me style, had brought all the ingredients to make margaritas as the cocktail to start the evening with the starters. And they were thrilled. They were like, oh, hailstorm margaritas, you know, so they're scooping up the hail, filling the cups, making these margaritas. Everyone's so excited. And then it starts to drizzle again. We're like, oh no. So all of us huddle in the biggest tent, which is still a 2-man tent, but bigger than the other 2-man tents. So 6 of us are sitting in this tent, laughing, drinking the hailstorm margaritas. And again, there's like a energy shift. And the hail gets bigger and the lightning gets louder, and the lightning gets stronger and more frequent, and the thunder gets louder. And the hail turns into golf ball size. And our friend, he had a really good quality tent, but it was quite old and the fly sheet was a bit sun-baked. And it just starts to shred the tent. And we're all sitting inside, huddled, and our kind of laughing kind of becomes a bit more delirious. And, you know, the tent is now shredded. There are gaping holes, you know, like 1/2 meter wide, and we are being rained on. The tent is filling up with water. We're huddling over, you know, our friends' sleeping bags to try and keep them warm. We have no idea if our tents are also being shredded. You know, we weren't, and we just in there, like in this kind of crazy environment. And, you know, then someone's sitting there and they're just like, Olive, anyone?
Sounds like the perfect time to go outside and then do the Shakespeare sonnets. With the thunder and the rain, could be quite epic.
No, and this, you know, we had kind of, it wasn't a great experience. I eventually ran back to my tent, thank goodness it hadn't been shredded, and hopped inside and kind of, you know, we had already changed from one set of wet clothes into a set of dry clothes. Now those clothes were wet because we were being rained on. So I'm just in my sleeping bag trying to dry out. And then, you know, it stopped again. The pair whose tent had been shredded very bravely stuck to their night. They made dinner for us. And luckily my friend and I'd bought these first descent ponchos for my trip in Italy the previous year, because it was supposed to be thunder showers every day. Okay. And luckily in Italy it didn't rain at all, but here in the Drakensberg. And so the design of these ponchos is that they are a top, and so they have eyelets at the end and little loops.
Okay,
So we could use them to jimmy a top to put over our friend's tent, which was necessary because that night there were another 4 hailstorms.
Oh no.
And in the morning, and I've just told you that I'd been planning for this trip mentally and physically for years, and I was so excited to be there. But by the next day, 10 a.m., it was still raining. And as a group, it was such a difficult decision because I just wanted to carry on. But, you know, do you want to carry on a hike where you don't know what the weather's going to be like with people who don't really have a fly sheet? Our guide's tent was completely soaked. We were all wet and but like grumpy. We hadn't eaten, you know, we just ate snacks in our tent for breakfast because every time we were ready to leave, it would come down again. So we packed up everything, another wave of rain. And then as a group, we were like, cool, we've got to go back. And I was like, oh no. Like one night, you know, we've come all of this. I've flown to Joburg, driven there. We've booked everything, paid for everything. I really want to be there and finish the next 3 nights. But we were like, the best thing to do is to go down. You know, maybe we'll do another day hike. And as we had our packs on, the clouds parted and the sun shone, and we just made a split decision. And literally from facing back down together falls turned left and carried on with the rest of our hike. So yeah, thank goodness for the ponchos. Saved the whole Drakensberg trip.
Wow, but it made for a great story. Although I'm sure that those sonnet reading friends of yours, they probably will rather get to the destination from now on.
Yes, no, lesson learned. It took us a bit of time. None of us really did a hike or an overnight hike or a multi-day hike for a couple of months afterwards. We're like, we're just going to stay in our homes where we know we're safe. But yeah, now we back at it, so we've all recovered.
The outdoor life is for everyone. And our clothes are too. It's made to last in the sun, wind and weather. Whether you're fishing, hiking, camping or going to work. Get all your favorite brands like First Ascent, Cape Storm, African Nature, High-Tech and Columbia all under one roof. Outdoor Warehouse. For every adventure. Also shop online.
For Every Adventure podcast, bringing you all the tips and tricks for your next adventure.
So in the lovely stories Catherine's told us, she's mentioned a few products that she got from Outdoor Warehouse. So let's talk about that. The first thing that comes to mind is the pot. You talked about how in the group, the Come Dine Me contestants for the day would carry the pot to the next camping site.
Yes, so there's 2 pots that you can get from Outdoor Warehouse, both Stanley. So the one is the camp cooking set, which is quite nice if you are doing a 4x4 trip or a camping trip or you going on a hiking trip. So it's a 3.5 litre pot. It also comes with a pan. They come with these great little, it's like a ladle and a egg flip that comes in 2 pieces. So you clip them together. So it stores it's quite a compact product. And then the Stanley, they have a Stanley pot set, which is also, it's 1 litre. So if it's just the 2 of you, or even if you're just going on a day hike and you want to be able to make coffee or tea, it's a 1 litre pot. The handle folds over beautifully, so it's not going to poke any holes in your backpack. And yeah, that's great for shorter trips or just cooking in pairs.
Lovely. And then you mentioned a fridge as well. That was on your Namibia trip.
Yes. So obviously, when you have, the dual battery system or you're able to plug in at a campsite or at a caravan park, you want to have a fridge, whether you're cooling your beers or you've got a block of cheese or some butter or your meats in the freezer. Outdoor Warehouse have the National Lunar and the Snowmaster, both great products, depending on your uses. We actually unscrewed the back seats of my partner's Fortuner to stick our fridge in just so that it would fit and be cozy. And then for 3.5 weeks, we were totally reliant on the ice and the beers and the meat coming out of there.
Speaking of ice, well, I think we should call this episode Margaritas and Hailstorms. It's a great episode title. But speaking of ice, let's talk about the hailstorm incident and the product that saved the day there.
Yes, so First Ascent has these incredible ponchos. So it's designed for backpacking, but if you don't have a backpack, that's fine. But basically the back half is much longer. So if you're wearing a big backpack, there's enough space for it to drape over the backpack while still protecting you. And then unlike other ponchos, which might be rounded or are kind of designed to be a poncho, this is more versatile. So it's like a flat sheet with a hood. And it has, clips for when you're wearing it, but eyelets. I actually have only when the first hailstorm happened in the Drakensberg did I use it as a poncho. But in Italy and in other hikes that I've done, I've tied rope to kind of give us protection during the rain to cook dinner. So just like a normal tarp, we've used it on the floor as a tarp. And then on this trip, we used it, both of them, we combined them and it created a fly sheet, which allowed us to carry on the hike because our friends no longer had a fly sheet.
Yeah, it's handy for wherever you roam. Because Italy. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm also scared of getting cold. So when it comes to a sleeping bag, what do you choose?
So this is something that myself and my mum invested in. Buying hiking gear or camping gear, it's not something that you're going to go out to the shop tomorrow and do. You want to really think about what you want. You want to test. You want to borrow your friend's sleeping bag, make sure that it keeps you warm. And I borrowed my partner's First Ascent icebreaker when I did the Amatola. And I was the only person who was warm every single night. People had really kind of like high-tech sleeping bags. They'd spent a lot of money, but having a down sleeping bag, and you want to, even though it might be summer, it's easier to take your blanket off or stick your leg out or only, have the bottom half of you covered. But you can't get more warm if you don't have more sleeping bag.
Yes.
And after being cold on the Fish River, but warm on the Amatola in this icebreaker, my mom and I went Harvey's for one of my birthdays, and I got this icebreaker, and I have never looked back.
Okay, great tip.
So tell me about the jet boil.
Yeah, so this is a great device. It really, if you are like really cold or you get you're one of those people who like can't function until you've had coffee in the morning. You want a quick coffee. The jet boil really blasts heat at a high rate, and it's got a specially designed, almost like a giant mug that fits specifically into it and can withstand the heat that the gas bottle pumps out. So it heats raw water really, really quickly. So a lot of my customers and my clients, like you just turn it on, 15 to 30 seconds later, you've got hot water and you can just pour that directly into the pouch, and then, your Mama Alice meal is ready. You don't have to cook it on a pot. So a jet boil, just gets you hot water quickly.
And you mentioned the big volcano pan that your partner prefers to use on the camping trips.
Yes, so this is amazing for your 4x4 trips, or if you're doing a catering event, or you're going to a festival for a week, or even if you're just having 15 people coming over for breakfast at home, you can pull out your camping gear and, it'll sit over all 4 of your gas hobs at home. And I really love this because I once made shakshuka for 24 people in one pan. And so it's amazing for the size of it. It's got a lifetime guarantee. It doesn't matter if you have it directly on a fire. It's designed to withstand that heat. The handles can even, be licked by the flames, and they don't melt off like a lot of pans do. Okay. And it's really non-stick. So you can really put it through the works, whether you're making your bacon and eggs or, frying a rosti or your boerewors. It really can, you can throw anything at this pan and it's like there to handle it. It's like the South African outdoor pan.
I'm thinking a massive pancake, right?
Yes.
A massive pancake, and then you write a sonnet about the big pancake.
Can work.
Well, thanks a lot, Catherine. This was a fun chat. I'm inspired to explore my creative cooking side.
Definitely. You need to go and get yourself some Mama Alice.
Definitely. And hey, follow us on Spotify and on Apple. Remember, every 2 weeks we have a brand new episode, so just don't miss any of the episodes. And if you're tuning in for the first time, we have a few we've already recorded. Go check that out as well.
Join the For Every Adventure podcast as we explore the great outdoors.